Hello and welcome to the Sandip Roy Show on Express Audio.
The Sandip Roy Show.
The same-sex marriage verdict from the Indian Supreme Court dampened the Dussehra and Durga Puja spirits for many activists and supporters of the issue. On October 17th, the court refused to legalize same-sex marriage in India, saying there was no fundamental right to it, but also spoke out against discrimination against same-sex couples. I happened to be listening to that verdict on a patchy connection on the mobile phone while sitting in Kathmandu's historic Darbar Square. Nepal is actually quite a few steps ahead of India when it comes to this issue, a role model of sorts for activists in India. In 2007, Nepal introduced laws to protect gender and sexual minorities. It officially recognized third gender, and it told the government to form a committee to look into decriminalizing and destigmatizing same-sex marriage, and asked the government to scrap or amend all discriminatory laws against LGBTI people. In 2011, Nepal included third gender in its census. The 2015 constitution, adopted after much debate and many delays, says marginalized communities should be granted equal rights under the law. It allows someone to get a citizenship certificate in accordance with one's gender identity and prohibits discrimination. In 2015, it authorized a third gender category for passport holders, but no same-sex marriage. Even the new Nepali Civil Code in 2018 does not include it. So activists went to court again. In June 2023, a judge directed the government to temporarily register the marriages of non-traditional couples and sexual minorities. Headlines appeared around the world: Nepal legalizes same-sex marriage. But not quite. Sunil Babu Pant is one of Nepal's best-known LGBTI activists. He started its first LGBT rights group, the Blue Diamond Society, in 2001, and has been batting for LGBT rights in court for years. Way back in 2007, that landmark case that set the ball rolling to protect sexual minorities, that was Sunil Babu Pant and others versus the Nepal government. I met Sunil in Nepal right before the Indian Supreme Court ruled on the same-sex marriage case. Sitting outside a hotel in Kathmandu, the soft-spoken activists explained why Nepali activists had to go to court this year. They'd been waiting for the government to act since 2007.
The bills that government supposed to present to the parliament since the last 2007 directive order by the Supreme Court on the writ that Blue Diamond Society and 3 other organizations filed, it somewhere lost or pending at the either Home Ministry or the Law Ministry or the Women's Ministry. They did ask, the Women's Ministry prepared a concept on allowing same-sex plus other non-traditional heterosexual marriages and sent it to the Law Ministry for their opinion. And they studied, and then I saw their response, the comments on the concept. The 4 other first questions were relevant, but the 5th question was how much the economic burden to the country's treasury if they allowed to marry a same-sex marriage and third genders to marry. So it's a deep-rooted prejudice they have, and unless they overcome to it and educate themselves, it's not a smooth ride for marriage equality to prevail in Nepal.
Fed up with the interminable delay, some activists went back to the court. They'd waited long enough.
So the argument is over 16 years, government has not implemented, and then this community is still deprived from the basic rights as a citizen to form a family and to marry person in the world, which is guaranteed by the Constitution. And we also said that you would perhaps issue a directive order again as 15 years, 16 years ago, and then it will take perhaps forever or a long time. But we need the immediate remedy now. So we actually ask a prescription of having this, district court from each province capital to have a mechanism of registering non-heterosexual, marriages.
Among those who approached the court were Maya Gurung, a transgender woman who has not changed her gender on official documents, and Surendra Pandey, a cisgender man. They became a celebrated test case in the fight for same-sex marriage in Nepal.
But out of frustration for so many years, 9 activists from this community, including the famous couple now, Maya Gurung and Surendra Pandey, filed a writ petition with the Supreme Court in early June of this year. After 3 weeks, the first hearing, the court gave an interim order to allow same-sex marriage, and then it issued a so-called order to the government why it took so long, and they even do not have marriage in the bill. But it's also, as an interim relief, asked the relevant authorities to keep a separate temporary registered book and allow same-sex marriage and other non-heterosexual marriages.
But what the higher court proposes, the lower court can wiggle around. Sometimes rights can get bogged down in wordplay and semantics. That's what happened to Gurung and Pandey when they went to register their marriage armed with the Supreme Court order.
The couple, Maya and Surendra, went ahead to the district court, applied for a marriage registration. The single bench of the district court judge refused to register marriage, playing with the words, saying that it was not a clearly order for us to implement, and the word is marriage registration, and we are not the institution that do marriage registration. We are only do a registered marriage, meaning court marriage only.
Registering a marriage versus marriage registration. This sounds like nitpicking semantics. Sunil agrees.
We asked them to understand the spirit of the decision from the Supreme Court. They refused, saying, it's a marriage registration. You go to a local body and then there you fill up the form where, husband should be a man and the wife should be a woman, meaning that, unless there is a, heterosexual couple, there's no marriage provision, they indirectly saying, and then refusing to implement the Supreme Court decision. We went ahead to the High Court. High Court upheld the District Court decision, so it's in a limbo.
Sunil says the judge was reluctant to revisit his decision.
So he also didn't do anything on the application to correct his decision. So he suggested go to the good body. I said, would they register? Because it's no law. And he said he was not sure. So I asked him, so what is the implementation with this, your decision? Where do we go with this piece of paper? He said he wasn't sure. But, we're not giving up. So there's a fight continuing.
The court fight is a lesson for activists elsewhere in places like India. Even if courts pave the way for same-sex marriage, Parliament can drag its feet if it wants. That's what happened in Nepal.
Parliament is not saying they wouldn't do it. Government always says, but lingering, they never even have drafted the bill. So you can't deny the basic right of the citizen forever. So you cannot trust the same government and Parliament who hasn't done anything for the last 16 years.
But legal or not, the marriages keep happening.
Yes, almost every week, and one or the other couple comes out to the social media. It's happening.
Even Sunil has officiated some.
Yeah, it's partly to promote the tourism here as well. So we have officiated marriages for the couple foreigners who wants to come and honor their relation and celebrate him.
So like people from India would come.
They would come and get married here. The lesbian couples are the first and famous one. Even the very hardcore Hindu Pandits celebrated their marriage in Dakshin Kali temple, which is very famous. A lot of devotees, but the locals just enjoyed it. The public are actually very sort of tolerant, or not just tolerant. Then they take it, the difference is very easily, very accommodating, inclusive. So if you look at after the marriage interim order from the Supreme Court, one of the right-wing leaders here, Hindu right-wing leader, said, Kamal Thapa, said court made a huge mistake, it's unnatural, it will destroy the society kind of thing. But backlash he faced was so revealing how much the society have evolved or always been more inclusive.
Yet, despite that claim of inclusivity, when Sunil made a film recently, Blue Flower, that's been doing the rounds of film festivals, it told a tragic story of social pressure and stigma. It's based, he says, on a true story he had heard from a boy from the Terai region whom he had met at a workshop when Blue Diamond Society was just gearing up.
Very bright, young boy, not too masculine, not too feminine. He ran away twice because they pressured him to marry a woman he never wanted. But the third time, blackmail was so strong, was emotionally in my mother. And then so he couldn't say no, so he was compelled to marry a woman, and they do not have children even after a year of marriage. So all the gossips flows around. Some blames the boys, but most of the other blame the woman, the wife. So it's about that story, which is quite common still. And then they had a third person involved to solve the problem. It's quite complicated. Everyone suffers. The whole family suffers because of that. And despite all these rights, I think the marriage institution is so strong and people psyche here. So they want to have, especially the sons, get more pressure.
He says, of course, women too face pressure, but it's of a different kind.
The lesbians also perhaps get pressure, but for them it's marrying off to somebody else. So the continuing patriarchal lineage is falls of the man. So gay men are, I think, a bit in that sense more severely victimized. But on the other hand, if on that story a gay man tells her wife on the wedding night that he's not interested in a woman, so he's arranged separate beds for them. But for the lesbian, it would have been impossible. I don't think lesbian would, if after she married to a man in their man's home, I don't think she would dare to pull the pillow off from the bed instead of said to her husband who's waiting for a honeymoon first night, I'm not interested in men.
Sunil is quite relieved that the film has been received well.
I did a premiere on the 8th of February here, have a whole cinema hall jam-packed, because it was a premiere, so I invited the Speaker of the House as a chief guest. He stayed all the way through and then also made a good remark. He said, it's all natural thing, but it's unfortunately very sad that people have to go through this forced marriages. And he was more concerned about the women's lives ruined. So to protect man and woman, they are considering same-sex marriage.
Not so much a same-sex marriage bill as a bill to protect men and women from ending up in forced marriages. Sunil says the stigma and conditioning runs deep, even though unlike India, Nepal didn't have a Section 377 that criminalized sex against the order of nature.
Not spelled out. There was a chapter called bestiality. If a man has sex with a cow, then it's almost like a life imprisonment. It's more than raping a woman. Those 3 articles like that specifically mentions, the bull and the others, perhaps dog or something. And the 4th one said any other unnatural sex, meaning the bestiality here, are punishable. But there was the word unnatural sex. Nowhere it was defined as a sex between 2 men or 2 women. So it was never used to prosecute any gays or lesbian before. When the transgender gays were arrested, they were always used the public nuisance, not this unnatural thing, because the chapter was bestiality.
Later, he realized that attitudes were shaped not by law, but by centuries of religious beliefs and cultural conceptions.
So I see now, Buddhism, particularly Jainism, clearly defines you are a man because your sexual morality was properly upheld in your past life. You were a bit loose on your sexual morality in the past life. That's why you're a woman. And you are even more, lost. That's why you are a queer or a person of third nature, third gender person. And one of the funny thing I read when I was always doing, my monkhood time and things like that, they compared the sexual passion with the fire. And they compare the man's sexual passion with the kitchen fire, which is containable but useful to cook the fire. You just have to be careful. The women's sexual passion, they compare with the, wildfire. Very wild, uncontrollable. So there's so much emphasis on controlling women's sexuality because they think and then it's their duty to contain it. And they also compare with the queer or LGBT or third gender's sexual passion with the mega city fire, much more destructive.
He wasn't aware of all these legal and cultural nuances when he began his journey. Sunil grew up in a Gurkha village, and his exposure to the issue happened when he was studying outside Nepal.
Yeah, I was perhaps aware, but there was no debate and there was no word. And then after studying 1 year, language in Ukraine, the Russian language, then the next year the students had to go through a medical examination thoroughly every year once. Yes, I could read the sign next year, and it was written, be aware of drug addicts, be aware of prostitutes, and be aware of homosexual. So I saw that, what does this mean, homosexual? I realized, homosexuality, well, that's me. And the society has a problem. And perhaps I also have a problem. Either hear from other international students who were caught practicing homosexuality were deported, but also the local ones, the Belarusians or the Russians, caught into the cruising areas and imprisoned. So it was a very scary time, and there was no way I could talk to or ask to anybody. They were scary being imprisoned or deported. But after I finished my master's degree there, I went to Japan for volunteer work. That's where in Tokyo I got exposed to the gay culture, the bookshops, the libraries, the shopping center, the clubs, and all those things, and spent more than 2.5 months just studying all these different gay rights struggles in other countries.
But in the context of Nepal, he kept drawing a blank. He knew no one.
And then, so I had this 1 year junior friend studying Nepalese, and his father was a human rights activist here, and he had a conference somewhere in Europe, so he's coming to see his son in Belarus. So this conversation in the evening, and he was telling his experience of this stupid European. They asked me, what is the situation of homosexuality in Nepal? Of course, Sunilji, it's a Western thing. I told them we don't have this problem.
Sunil decided he needed to find out for himself and meet other gay people in Nepal.
I just wanted to meet them and know about it, so I started going to the cruising areas. I met a lot of people within a week, a couple of hundreds, that different cruising areas I found. Then I also started knowing their problems, exclusion, blackmail, police atrocities, expelled from the schools, job, expulsion. A couple of them were paying their 50% of the salary to their hustlers, the man who trapped them, and then now they want sucking money every month. And some of them were forced to marry, and their, male partners were even abusing their wives as well.
One story really shook him.
A young man who loved to do cross dressing, but he was living with his brother. So she took a job as a dancer into the dance bar. And all of a sudden, one day, his brother comes to drink beer with his friends and notices his brother dancing as a female at this stage. So he bashed her badly at home, and she committed suicide within 3 days. And then I talked to the other friends. Then I knew, let's try and do a police case, because she would get some kind of justice even after her death. Otherwise, this were to continue like this. I said, no. If you go to the police, they will all talk to us, and we've been phoning, etc. So we will also out at home. We will bring disaster. I said, what kind of situation we live in? We can't even go to seek the justice. That's unacceptable. So I said, we must get organized. That's where the idea coming from. After the death of the Kali, her name was Kali.
Blue Diamond Society was registered in 2001. Sunil says he didn't face any violent reactions from civil society. Sexuality, whether heterosexuality or homosexuality, was just not part of ordinary discourse. Some of the pushback came from within the gay community itself.
And we started doing a bit visible, a bit campaigning things, and then the exact thing you said was told by some of the educated upper class gay men then. Sunil, what you doing? You stupid. How can you hang out with transgenders and flag this case? But it will also backfire, and then it's better to have a society not knowing us, and we're quite happy to live underground. We can go to a nice restaurant and we go to this. Of course, they were very rich, and they could even go to Bangkok and things like that.
But he says Nepal has changed. Some of those upper-class gay men are facing pushback from queer folks who refuse to live underground.
Some of the educated would identify as a trans woman. During those days, they used to call métis. And they call some of the educated gay men when they see each other, "You're also métis." He said, no, we're gay. But they said it's the same thing. We are a local, so we call it métis. We're English métis. We used to get very offended by this.
But while the reaction to his activism wasn't violently homophobic, it was happening at a time when Nepal was going through violent upheaval. The civil democracy movements, the anti-monarchy movements, the Maoist rebellion were all racking the country. I wondered if it also meant that public places were being more heavily scrutinized. There was more surveillance, and that impacted the fates of those who lived lives in the shadows of the state.
Yes, it did. And then there's so much arrest, detention used to happen. Every week, almost 3 or 4 times, I have to go and be allowed particularly mostly feminine gay men or third genders that time. So there's a lot of pressure on organizing. And from 2003, it was a state of emergency. And then there's a third force added to fight against the Maoists here. We had this regular army and regular police. There was an armed police force everywhere, checkposts. So we have cases of abuse. And then more city areas were controlled by the government, meaning by the security forces. But the rural areas were largely controlled by the Maoists, by the rebels. And then Kathmandu, of course, more abuse from the police and the rest. But in rural areas, particularly in the south, those Nattuas and Hijras, for their survival, they used to travel, still do, across the border, rural areas. And they have Maoist checkposts. They get raped there. They come to the city areas. They get raped by the police or the army. Yeah, it's a very hard time.
In 2005, the government decided to crack down hard on non-governmental organizations as the democracy movement gathered steam. Blue Diamond knew it was in a vulnerable situation.
Most of the political leaders and social human rights activists even fled to Delhi. Very few of us were here. And they issued an ordinance by the king back then that any NGOs who threatens to the national security, the sovereignty, integrity of the country, or anything anti-cultural, that would be, they would close down those NGOs. And we could be easily seen as anti-cultural. So we said they could use it. And then I knew a couple of homophobic person back then within the king's cabinet. So we were the first organization to denounce that ordinance, king's ordinance, and call for a meeting. And so I see them, the crisis of human rights activists here. So the NGO Federation's head was coming to Blue Diamond Society first time because there was something voice against the king, the mighty king. We started getting recognition. It's a tiny minority groups, very small compared to the other NGOs, raising their voice so fearlessly, bravely. So we started getting a lot of calls by then, by others. Otherwise, the NGO Federation didn't even give membership to Blue Diamond Society.
But it also split his colleagues within Blue Diamond Society itself.
There was also division into the Blue Diamond. There's some transgenders, very monarchist, because they used to get invited to the royal family's functions before. So it's like very royalist. And I said, you all there, that's fine. Personal relations are different. But if there is no democracy and human rights for the larger country, we can't expect a minority rights. Impossible. We must go against this ruling. This is nothing personal, and I'm not against monarchy. And squeezing all this civil liberty, freedom of speech is not going to do anything good for us. So we must go to the Swiss. And then it's the half disagreed. I said, yeah, let's do compromise. Those who wish to do it, join. Let's join it. So I said, I'm going every day until it is. And those who wish to come, come. Those who wish to stay back in the office, do your office work.
That exposure, though, caught the attention of other politicians. Sunil found himself being often handed the mic to speak up at rallies and press conferences.
Never had experience of giving political speeches, so quick little one, and then a little bit of bringing these UN languages, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights ensures our freedom of existence, identity, and all those things, social, economic, political class, a little bit, which is also interesting to them. So the curiosity from them, and slowly the political connections, contacts started building. And the populist movement, within 6 months, got really massive. Then the king backed off, the parliament was reinstated, then Maoist peace accord signed with the government with the help of Indian government in Delhi. So the Maoists were overground, and then they were writing a new constitution. They asked for the recommendation.
And thus, Sunil Babu Pant became a member of Nepal's Constituent Assembly when in 2008, the Communist Party of Nepal United offered him one of 5 proportional support seats it had secured in the Constituent Assembly. He served there till 2013.
Hard work, but I enjoyed every day. A lot of fun. At the same time, the major role's time was educating, because large Constituent Assembly, 601 of us. And then all these delays, not having enough businesses really helped me personally, because I had all the times to socialize with them, talk with them, have this laptop and presentation made. And women were very happy to come and sit in the group. But men, even they come to the group, they never asked a question. But then individually, then one-to-one, they had a lot of questions. The mostly asked question was how to lesbian have sex.
But while he was a pioneer, he says it didn't quite throw open the doors to others like him.
No, since I lived, nobody got elected. Then the parliament, there's 3 consecutive parliaments, none of them from the community.
And the politicians who had made all kinds of promises about inclusion when lobbying for support were suddenly not responding to calls for meetings. While same-sex marriage grabs the media attention, whether in Nepal or India, Sunil says the community still faces many other problems beyond marriage.
But from it is the inclusion. The Article 42 of the new constitution guarantees many minorities, including LGBTIs, proportionate inclusion to all government departments. That has not implemented. So that's a big part. There is not a single openly LGBT person into the civil service. It's one of the largest ones. There's nobody in the army, nobody in the armed police force, nobody into the police. So uniform is completely excluding. Uniform services, forces are completely excluding. The other one, then the education. The education curricular department have put LGBT chapter in the class 7, 8, 9 or 6, 7, 8 into the health and social science subject. But none of the teachers know how to teach. So either they avoid teaching it and ask the students to rely on Google, or once they teach, they make the opposite impact. They make mockery, cheap joke, everybody giggling. So if a child growing differently, it would be traumatic for them. So that's the teacher's guide or resource material is not there.
He thinks what might help push the needle is if more LGBTI people enter the political fray instead of begging for their rights from other lawmakers.
Then another major one, I think, is the political inclusion. So we need to have another 4 or 5 years, which I'm thinking that's why I've come back. I want to invest if right condition comes forward, is that having 100, 150 or 200 from all the provinces. We have 7 provinces, at least 20, 25 people from each province, training them on political.
His goal now is to create a class of LGBTI activists who see a future for themselves within politics.
On politics, basically, through workshops, through different trainings, etc., and help them to choose what party they want to do or whether they want to continue to the independent candidacy. How one climb the ladder, how someone get a ticket, and also explaining them about election commissions, what kind of network it has, how does it operate, what are the periodic elections it runs from ward level to village to the municipality to district to the province level to the federal level. And I also have a lot of friends in the polity, in the different political parties. They're very happy to play as a mentorship role to these folks.
Political parties do make some gestures of inclusivity, even if it's just lip service.
Quite a few of them, and more party at least includes a couple of lines in the party manifesto, positive ones. And then some the smaller parties have called them. They would otherwise use you as a token and ask you to dance like they do in India, the transgenders, just to bring the crowd forward. Not really substantial role they would ever assign for.
The story of Nepal's march towards LGBT progress has also made him wonder if the rights-based Western model is the only way out there. Countries that were colonized by the West and had anti-unnatural sex laws like Section 377 often think that criminalization is the problem, that if they can remove that, all other changes will follow. As the same-sex marriage case in India shows, that's not necessarily the case. In Nepal, the political parties made the right noises, as does the Supreme Court, even if they have not delivered in material terms. The law is progressive, but still, real social progress is hard.
No, I think you have to go much deeper where the root problems are, whether it's criminalized or incriminalized. The psychic of the society, the base is patriarchy. What happens in patriarchy? The heterosexual macho man is valued much more. And he ensures that his lineage, genetic male-to-male lineage is continued and being dominant. That's the idea of patriarchy. For that, they have very cleverly institutionalized the heterosexual marriage. So anything threatens to that marriage is, eventually very strongly denied and or crushed by those forces. That's why homosexual marriage is threatening their existence. They don't. Women is also same. Also, woman marrying a man, they would equally, oppose. As man must marry a woman, not woman marrying a, man. This is not just against gay marriage. If anything threatens these marriage institutions of heterosexualized marriage to continue patriarchy, they look at that. That's why all religion oppose. Not just homosexuality, anything that somehow a single woman, having a mother having passing their name to the child in citizenship is a contentious issue.
These days, after a stint where he trained as a Buddhist monk, Sunil's interest is in uncovering an older tradition in Nepal that's not patriarchal. He thinks that's where LGBTI diversity can really find its indigenous roots truly at home in Nepal's soil.
And then that's what I'm studying, these Ajima, the grandmother goddesses traditions, and then the social, political, economic, religious system of matriarchal times, which is quite much more inclusive, sort of respectful to marginalized communities, also to the women, and discovered that during matriarchal time, we have not just 2 or 3, 6 genders. The sexual expression of women was not frowned upon. Quite confident women. Patriarchy is about territory, is about controlling it, about man being the dominant. Whereas matriarchy is no territory. They don't want to conquer the land or, raise their flag in somebody else's land. The respect and the rules for all LGBTI man, woman were very respectful based on their own physiological, biological, spiritual nature. 6 genders were accepted. It's based on inclusion, inclusivity, and more of nurturing and compassion. So it's not just opposite, if we have men dominating in matriarchy, woman dominating. It's not like that. Matriarchy is not about woman, it's about mothering.
Some would say Sunil Babu Pant is the mother of Nepal's LGBTI movement. He chuckles and shrugs.
Mothered and then fathered. No, I don't take it as a pride. The thing, I was very fortunate, and I was at that time, right moment, perhaps, in the right time, in the right place. But somehow I'm glad that I see the way I see things, and then this land is so rich with matriarchal values. I know patriarchy having invaded several times. Even the recorded history says first the Gopal Bangshi came, the Gopal dynasty, the Maispal dynasties. Then the Kirans came from the east. Then the Lichavi came from the south, and in other forces, Mallas came, then Shahas came, but still the goddesses are still powerful here. The rituals, cultures are still there, and the living goddesses are still there.
As is Sunil Babu Pant. He is still there and says despite all the problems and unkept promises, he sees hope in Nepal.
The 2001, we formed one organization. By 2012, by the time I leave, there was 45 organizations across Nepal. The grassroots local ones, I know Blue Diamond Society is well known internationally, but very good work done by other grassroots LGBTI organizations. Local government have started allocating some budgets here. There are people, even though they didn't win, but 4 or 5 people contested each election, even as an independent candidate. And then last time, one lesbian was only lost by a few hundred votes from the winner, from the largest party, Nepali Congress. It was a remarkable leadership. Slowly, eventually, we're making progress, having one of the very few countries that guarantees, inclusion, non-discrimination, equality by the Constitution. Huge achievement.
A few days after our conversation, the Indian Supreme Court verdict came down in Delhi, which basically passed the issue to Parliament. And it made me wonder what its impact would be on the same-sex marriages hanging in parliamentary limbo in Nepal. But then, as the activists like Sunil Babu Pant have proven, when it comes to pushing for change, there ain't no mountain high enough to stop them. Sunil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sandip, for having me.
Send us your thoughts about this show wherever you get your podcasts from. Find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Express Podcasts. Thanks as always for listening. This show was produced by Shashank Bhargav and edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. This is Sandip Roy on Express Audio.